Hello, welcome everyone to Black Man Speak. I'm your co-host, VJR Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, Tommy D. Duncan, otherwise known as TD3. Jimmy, it is the last day of May, May 31st, 2023. And if it's Wednesday night,
Yes, definitely Black Men Speak. And so let's get a little business out of the way. Let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share spread the word. So if you're here watching tonight, invite a friend so that way you guys have something interesting to talk about after the show. So with that being said, Tom, I know we got a full lineup, so
yes,
let's
sir.
jump right into it and get started. We
All
don't
right.
have a minute to waste.
I would agree, Jimmy. Hey, we thank everyone for joining us tonight, and we appreciate all of your support as our platform continues to grow. Of course, as Jimmy says, we are the most provocative show addressing issues in our community on YouTube and on the internet, and tonight is no different than
No
that. So,
different.
if you haven't done so, of course, subscribe, like, and share the information. There's some folks out there who are
And I forgot
needing
the
to
notification bell. Hit the notification bell also.
exactly. So,
Yes.
before we get started with our primary news stories for the night, Jimmy, there are a couple of people that we would miss that I think a lot of people know. They were national personalities that somehow we missed a little bit earlier this year, but I did want to
Okay.
acknowledge them very briefly. Jimmy, there is Randall Robinson, who some of you probably may have known. He was a human rights activist, an attorney, advocated, of course, against apartheid in South Africa and for democracy in Haiti. Of course, we've talked about Haiti several times over the last several months. He died in March at the tender age of 81 years old. But some of you might know him for a couple of books that
Mhm.
he's written: The Debt, What America Owes Blacks, and Quitting America. He also wrote an interesting book on what's going on in Haiti. And so
Okay.
we want to make sure that we acknowledge that. I think last year we went through probably about 40 or 50 people that uh, I guess, really pretty much did the last show. And we want to make sure that we do those throughout the year, this year. And then also, Jimmy, some of you may know Thomas Dortch. He died in February of this year at the tender age of 72 years old. He was a philanthropist, a civic leader, and also some of you may know him through him being a leader on several boards for HBCUs. And for those of you who've heard of 100 Black Men, of course, he was chairman of that organization for several years. They have great mentoring programs
They
for
do.
young boys, and so he was definitely one of the leading visionaries and voices for 100 Black Men, still around and kicking today. And so we wanted to acknowledge those two brothers out there as well, and make sure that we do this on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Also, for those of you, some of you I know probably are aware of this, but right after our last show, on May the 25th, for those of you who cover international affairs and keep up with what's going on in the African continent, May the 25th was African Liberation Day.
Oh, it
Yeah,
sure was.
yeah, African Liberation Day, and this was right after the day after our last show. We should have probably covered it back then, but the concept of African Liberation Day was established initially in 1958 when Kwame Nkrumah, then the first head of state of Ghana, convened the first conference of independent African nations in Accra. I think there were only 8 at the time. And originally, what they called African Freedom Day was established on April the 15th. And then several years after that, of course, more of our African nations got their freedom, fought for their freedom from European colonialism. And 1960 was proclaimed the Year of Africa. In 1963, on May the 25th, 31 African heads of state convened in a meeting and organized what some of you may know as the Organization of African Unity. And I believe it was 1999 that there were a few policy changes that came about. And then what we know now as the African Union came into being. But for those of you who are out there who had a chance to celebrate, we definitely hope you enjoyed that around the world, because we know we have folks probably watching us from all walks of life and all parts
Correct.
of the world. And so we want to acknowledge African Liberation Day, and I think we have a brief video.
We do. So why don't we play it real quick, Tom, and then we'll pick up on the backside.
Sounds good.
May 25th is celebrated as African Liberation Day, commemorating the struggles for liberation from colonialism and the formation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. Comprising 21 member states, the organization supported liberation movements in Africa's remaining colonies and coordinated the construction of a new African society free of exploitation. The antecedents of African Liberation Day go as far as 1900 and 1945, when Pan-African conferences were held in London and Manchester respectively. The struggle to build African solidarity through Pan-Africanism was driven by legendary revolutionary leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah, the first Prime Minister and President of independent Ghana. Within a year of Ghana's independence on 15 April 1958, Nkrumah convened the All-African People's Conference, the first meeting of independent African states. The conference set the stage for connecting diverse.
Okay. So, Tom, you know I have one little problem.
Okay, what's your problem, Jimmy? You know, we know you have to have a problem.
Yeah, you know, I'm always going to find something, Tom.
Yes, you are.
The meeting in 1963, it was held in London and Manchester. Tom, of all the African states, in the African continent, surely you could have found a location in Africa to have that meeting to help formalize the organization. So,
What year are we talking about?
1963.
1963, I was pretty sure was in. Well, that's a good point. I think
It was in London. It was in Manchester. Yeah, London.
Gotcha.
So
the version was in Accra, and I believe the one in '99, where they established the AU, was in Ethiopia. So you may be correct on that.
So it was something that needed to be done, Tom, and it still is very needed. Because the continent of Africa has been exploited, it's been raped, it's been taken advantage of, and so every little bit that can be done to chip away at independence, and really to come together, because if they can come together economically and trade with each other, Tom, they're going to have a market and an economy that's larger
one of the largest in the world.
That's larger than the European Union, and that could rival the Asian market. So. You know, but they've only had their independence for a very short time. Tom, we're talking a lot of countries in the 60s. So we're talking maybe less than 70 years.
Yes, sir.
So they haven't had a long time to get used to and get comfortable with freedom and in their independence. And also, Tom, there's still a lot of war and fighting going on, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I'm hoping and praying that that somehow that gets pulled together and this all works out.
Yeah, Jimmy, I would agree with you on some of those fronts. I mean, there are 54, I think 55 countries that are part of the African Union. And, you know, at the end of the day, when you look at the destabilization of the African continent, that is by design, by certain powers that benefit and profit from the destabilization of many of the African nations that we know today. We know that there are some very powerful countries out there that want to continue to,
of course, Tom,
the natural resources in addition to the human capital that they have exploited for the last several centuries. And in addition to that, but think about the potential vision. If, for instance, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Nyeres, and those folks were able to win out the argument saying that, you know, we need to unify now. We don't need to operate as 54, not at that time 54, but as 54 countries, but we need to operate as one unit. When we look at that, we talk about one currency, one banking system, one national military that is going to have domain over the entire continent of Africa. We look at a national education system. You can't imagine where not just folks in Africa would be today, but also you're talking about Black people in the United States, in South America, in the Caribbean countries, because now you're talking about economic ties among Blacks globally or Africans globally. And the reality of it, Jimmy, we understand that there are certain people who don't want that to happen. So,
well, Tom, it's not just some people. I mean, you know, it's the entire UN. I mean, there are a lot of nations that contribute to the UN. For example, you know, a lot of African nations are being paid not to
Right.
develop energy.
You're correct. You're
You
correct.
know, the not build coal plants, not build power plants. And when you look at the continent of Africa at night from the space station, it is literally dark. The rest of the world is lit up. Asia is lit up. Western Europe is lit up. America is lit up. Even Central and South America. I mean, you see lights in the city. You fly over Africa, you see a light here and a light there. And Tom, so you cannot develop as a modern day country and have a modern day economy and a world class economic system and education system without energy. You need lights on. You need something to run the power. I mean, the power plants to run the factories. Trying to operate an economy off light bulbs and candles is just not going to do it, Tom. So I wish the African leaders stop taking money from the UN, stop buying into climate change and its green energy. Do what you have to do. China puts a coal power plant online every week to keep up with their demand, Tom. And so the African nations need to do whatever they have to do. Coal plants, chop down trees, nuclear plant, I mean, whatever, natural gas, but you need energy to develop. You're not going to develop into a modern day economy without energy, Tom. So that's the first thing I think they need to change. Stop taking the money.
Yeah, Jimmy, you're correct. There's something called debt, massive amounts of debt
Massive amounts of it.
that prevents a lot of that from happening. I was reading an article, I believe it was just last week, of course, of all of the investment that China is making in Africa, and they're talking about debt restructuring, in some of the African countries where they've been investing in. And if they say, hey, if you can't make your payments, what we're going to do is we're just going to take your mineral resources,
Yes.
for free. And so that is what happens.
Well, it's not just China, Tom. Or the Russians have forgiven some debt to some African nations also that are rich in resources. Why? Because they want the gold. They want the resources. Like, okay, well, we'll forgive some of this debt, but just ignore that backhoe that we're digging and mining and taking your resources.
You're correct, Jimmy. And when Africa is the cradle of civilization. It is a scientific fact. Not just black, but white scholars know that as well. And it's still to this day, the most mineral wealthy mass of land in the world. Of course, other countries who need that know that. And so as a result, I would agree with you. At some point in time, this has to stop because ultimately, everything is at stake. For the over 1 billion, I believe, people who are in the continent of Africa.
1.3 billion people.
And if you were to build an economic bloc among those 54 countries, then you know what? There's a whole different story around the world because you're not having to deal with, of course, all of the exploitation, the raping, and the pillaging of plunder.
That is true.
The economy drives everything. And so, again, the visionary founders of some of those countries had it right. Unfortunately, there were some other folks who were in the pockets.
I know
Of the Western powers,
and some of them have it right now, and so they're starting. So you can at least see the spark, and hopefully it catches on, and become a blaze, and until this thing is corrected. So
Gotcha. Well, let's move on, Jimmy. But before
what's our
that,
next story?
we want to acknowledge a couple of our guests who are on the chat line. Miss Audrey Booker, of course, out of the DFW area. We want to thank you. You supported us day in and week out. We want to thank Miss Dominique Bowman out of the Atlanta area. Oddmar, Mr. Orlando. We got Orlando in the house today out of Florida. We want to thank him for joining us today. And of course, Mr. Collegiate FB Roberts out of Prairie View, Texas, America. And of course, we have our
TV in the house, Tom.
Yes, sir. And then we, of course, have our good friend, Uncle Asar Al-K-Bilan as well, who lived in Nigeria and Accra for several years. I know he can tell some stories as well. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. Of course, line up with your comments, your questions, and we're going to go ahead and continue to move on with our show.
So Tom, before we move on, one quick thing.
Yes, sir.
We have implemented a new AI system for Black Men Speak. So it's all tied to our phone number. If you want to know more about the show and information, just text. We need to probably put our phone number up. Just text the word "about" to our phone number, and our AI will provide some information. But the big news, Tom, is that we have a bunch of giveaways.
Yes.
And I want to say this. We have a online list that you can opt into by just texting the word OPTIN, opt in, to our phone number and be added to the list. And we will notify you and update you about upcoming shows. You can also send us questions. But also, Tom, we have some vacation giveaways. It's not just for like one person who texts in or gets added to our list. For everyone who wants to take advantage of it. That's how generous we are. Um, so why don't we do this real quick before we go to the next story?
Sure. Sounds
Let's
great.
let's play our vacation video to show everybody how to take advantage of the giveaway.
Sounds great.
And Speak is giving away a complimentary vacation stay. 4 days and 3 nights. The nightly rental is on us, and all you pay are the room taxes. We have several locations to choose from. To be considered, text the word vacation to 1-385-526-5245.
Oh man, Jimmy, I guess we neither you nor I can get in on that, right?
No, we can't, Tom. But you know what? They did give us the discount card.
Okay.
But yeah, the vacation stays are for us to give away. Hopefully you register for yours. 'Cause I registered for mine. So
Okay. Good deal. All
and
right.
let's
Well,
let's put our phone number up real quick for those. Do we have it on the? Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
all right. We want to also welcome Miss Armanda Brown as well to our show. We want to thank you for showing up as well, Jimmy, and we'll announce this at the end. But we also have had a email address, Jimmy, that we want to share with everyone. For anyone who has any ideas, comments before, after the show, any ideas of upcoming stories, things that you think are important for us to address, and it is BMS. Black Men Speak, BMS Talk Show at att.net. We'll post that a little bit later on in the show. So,
And like I said, Tom, if you text about to our phone number,
okay.
that information will actually be sent to you. The AI will actually send you a text message with all our information, our contact information, and show information.
Okay, that sounds good. We want to do a follow-up story, Jimmy. We covered the story of a young man by the name of Ralph Yarl, a
Right.
17-year-old man who was unfortunately shot, fortunately not killed, when he accidentally went to the
I don't know how he wasn't killed, Tom, to be totally
yeah, he was
honest.
shot twice, once in the head by, I think he's 84, 85-year-old man. And, he's fortunately, thank God, doing well, doing better, recovering. But, he actually went out and went to support a program and an event
Uh,
to raise money
was it a
for
run?
brain trauma.
Like a 5K run?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So, Brain Injury Association of Kansas and Greater Kansas City, Ralph Yarl. And so, I mean, this wasn't that long ago, Jimmy. And this young man was shot in the head, but he's out trying to help and support other people. And so, kudos to him and his family, but make sure you get your rest, get back to 100%. We know that he wanted to go to my alma mater, Texas A&M University. So we want to continue to send this young man prayers that he will continue to recover over a period of time and continue to reach his dreams. But in another story that I saw a little bit earlier today, Jimmy, we're just following up.
Hold on, Tom. Before you leave that
Yes,
one, I just want to say that I hope the man who shot him rots in jail and dies,
that's Mr.
and
Andrew
never
Lester.
see never see daylight again for what he's done. It wasn't called for.
Gotcha. And interestingly enough, I got an update on that today. It looks like the Clay County Court ordered the case sealed following a motion filed by the attorneys for reasons that they feel that puts the case and or Andrew Lester at risk, being 84 years old. And so we'll see how that works out. But, at the end of the day, it's just uncalled for. I mean, if somebody goes to the wrong address, just tell them they're at the wrong address.
Well, Tom, this man's now. I don't throw around the racist term easily, but this man is an outright racist, and the reason they're sealing the records because they've gathered so much evidence of his racist views that the fear is that it is going to create a race problem if it just comes out. So we're going to try to do everything they can to downplay the racial aspect of it. That this was just an accidental shooting, which is going to what his defense is going to be. But no, there was no accident about this time. This was deliberate, and he knew what he was doing. He knew this boy was no threat to him whatsoever. but he shot twice anyway. So yeah, he needs to just ride in jail and die, as far as I'm concerned.
Gotcha. I understand, Jimmy. And, again, our prayers to Ralph Yarl. Continue to fight the good fight. Continue to do the right thing. This is a young man who had high aspirations, didn't deserve what happened to him, and we certainly hope he gets to a full recovery, reach all of his
Yes.
dreams. And so, of course, our prayers are for you, young man. Continue to go out there and make the best of your life. And we'll continue to move forward to our next story, Jimmy. This is next story, kind of interesting, Jimmy. We talk about these stories where someone's shot by law enforcement, and in San Francisco, this story has been out there for a few weeks now. But Banko Brown, the family of Banko Brown, who was shot and killed during an attempted situation, I believe,
Shoplifting.
shoplifting. His family and the attorneys, John Burris, have filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Walgreens, the security company that the gentleman worked for, I believe, Kingdom Protective Services, and the security guard. And this is kind of an ongoing, interesting story. The just a bad situation. Most folks have probably seen this by now, but it looks like Banko Brown was doing some shoplifting out of the Walgreen, ran into the officer. I think we may have a video on this, Jimmy.
Yes, we do,
They got
Tom.
into a scuffle, tried to walk out, and it wasn't pretty.
So let's play the video, and then we'll pick it up behind the video, after the video.
Sounds good.
Community members came out to say goodbye and their final goodbyes to Banko Brown, the man who was shot and killed by a Walgreens security guard last month in San Francisco. And those emotions were running high during the ceremony, even boiling over at one point. As people started shouting at one another, one person having to be held back. It lasted a few minutes, but things eventually calmed down, and that service did resume. Brown was killed at a Walgreens on Market Street in April after he allegedly stole some snacks from the store. Since then, there have been continued protests calling on the San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins to charge the guard, especially after security footage showed Brown leaving the store before the shooting. But in the weeks since then, State Attorney General Rob Bonta has agreed to review the case and decided if the state will indeed file any charges against the security guard.
Okay.
And I
Tom.
think from my understanding, the local district attorney has not filed any charges, but I think they are moving it up the food chain to the state.
They are, Tom. They're going to try to. And part of the problem here is the fist gesture, even though he didn't throw a punch, but just to make the gesture. So it's been a while since I've taken criminal law class, but I'll take a stab at it. I don't believe you actually have to inflict bodily harm on someone for them, if they perceive it to be a threat. They still have the right to defend themselves and protect themselves. And so it could probably be argued that him making the gesture with his fist, you not knowing if he's going to deliver the blow or not, if he's pulling it back, he's going to come back a second time when the shot was fired, because they were right together. Was it reasonable or fair? I personally think that if you're confronted with a butt kicking, that you should retaliate with a butt kicking. That when people pull guns and use deadly force, that you make absolutely sure that you are facing deadly force. I don't think if this young man even swung on him and hit him, that it would have been deadly. I mean, probably could have caused some bodily pain, but he most likely would have 99% of the time he would have survived a swing at the face, Tom. So in my personal mind, this would not be justified, but in a court of law with a jury, confronted with, hey, I thought he was going to swing on me. I thought I was in, harm of bodily harm. And, at that point, you don't know what's going through a person's head, but it is reasonable to assume that this person could have thought he was in bodily danger, and he was taking whatever measures he could to defend himself.
Well, I mean, there are issues on both sides of this. Obviously, if you look at the optics on the video, the security guard put him in a hold, got him down to the ground, got up, and then the assailant eventually was trying to walk out the door, then turned around.
He should just let him have it. There's nothing in that bag worth protecting.
I understand. Kind of went back and, as you said, lifted up his arm and kind of did a chest thing at, like when you get into a fight.
It's just a bluff, Tom. That's not really.
But this is the thing.
I mean, we know that.
This is the thing. for whatever Mr. Brown stole, it should not have been a death sentence. And the other concern that I have is this, when it comes to not just but this shooting to kill, as opposed to arm, as opposed to maim, as opposed to making sure they don't get away, as opposed to shooting them in an area in the head, in the chest, that's going to hit their heart, going to cause brain trauma and or death. You can shoot somebody to stop them without killing them. You can shoot them in the leg. You can shoot them in the arm.
Yes, you can,
If we go back to Harlem Nights, you can shoot them in their pinky toe. They ain't going no place.
Okay.
But we got too many situations, unfortunately, Jimmy, where they're shooting to kill as opposed to shooting to stop.
Well, Tom, if you're going to pull a gun out and use it, then I'm not for shooting to injure someone.
But this wasn't someone who, looking at the optics, wasn't an imminent threat of death. They didn't have a gun, didn't have a knife. Even if they wouldn't have threatened him, I'm going to kill you, whatever the case is, there was no weapon in that person's hand.
Right, but unfortunately, the law doesn't require you to be in imminent threat or inferior threat of losing your life. It's pretty much you can, if you have a reasonable belief that that you're in bodily harm, not even death, just bodily harm, you still have a right to defend yourself.
Defending yourself is fine, but not killing someone.
But even to include deadly force, Tom, I don't agree with the rationale of the law in that respect. Like I said, all too often, it used to be that when we were growing up, Tom, you got into a beef with someone, he beat you up, you beat him up, and you both, took some blows. But you know what? You dusted yourself off, and probably the next day you shook hands and you were friends again. But it just seems like today, no one wants to take an ass kicking. Everybody wants to pull a gun out or a knife and seriously injure someone. So that's just where we are in society today. It's very unfortunate this man lost his life over this incident. And like I said, if it was probably you and I in that situation, we probably wouldn't even flinch when he threw the fake punch, because we've seen it before growing up. We know people do that as a means to have you to back off a little bit. And really, I think maybe he was even too far away that even connect on a blow. And with that distance, you could probably do a Muhammad Ali and lean back a little bit. And if he did, or if he actually were to make a blow, that wouldn't connect with you. So yeah, to pull a gun out in that situation and kill someone, it's definitely overkill.
And that's why they're suing them, Jimmy, because they're filing, since there have been no criminal charges filed, the family is now filing a $25 million lawsuit against Walgreens, the security company. Okay, if you're not going to file any criminal charges, we're going to get some money out of this deal, because at the end of the day,
and most insurance companies, Tom, require retail outlets not to use any kind of force, not to confront people when they're stealing. So for him
they ended up recently changing Walgreens.
Oh, really?
Changing policy because I guess they'd had a lot of theft of merchandise within their stores. I don't know what the case is, but they ended up recently changing policy. The security guard saying it was, I think, recently initiated. I don't know how soon that was, but said the instructions to guard personnel was to engage in hands-on recovery of merchandise. And the guards were also allowed to request receipts of merchandise, but in any event, they were actively working together to retrieve or recover any stolen items once it is clear that the individual who concealed the items intended to leave the store without paying. It don't say nothing there about shooting and killing nobody.
It doesn't, Tom. So, like I said, very unfortunate. I feel for his family, and hopefully they find justice one way or the other.
Gotcha. So another one. So, all right. And the problem seems to be people don't value human life. Well, I mean, we live in a culture of violence. We live in a culture in a country that promotes and advocates, of course, gun violence. And as a result, this is what you're going to see.
Well, Tom, we have more guns on average than any nation in the world. We're a warrior nation. I mean,
I understand what you're saying, but that should be.
This country was forged on war, Tom. We've been fighting ever since this country was created. In fact, for us not to be fighting somebody, peacetime is rare for us.
Well, unfortunately, Jimmy, we have too many folks within our community, too many black men dying. We talk about this too regularly. There are some countries who Jimmy, maybe get 1 or 2 year per year if you want to look at Japan, countries like Japan. I mean, when certain countries, one death happens, it's like a national story just because it happened. We live in a country where, unfortunately, it has become too common.
Yes, and everybody got has to weaponize to protect themselves these days. So
And
that's what it is, Tom.
gotcha. And let's go ahead, and while we're talking about another shooting incident by law enforcement, we have the follow-up on the 11-year-old boy in Indianola, Mississippi, who was shot after he called for 911.
And this was kind of a mystery to me, Tom,
To
because I
help
just
his
don't get it.
mother, who felt threatened because someone who was unwelcome came to the house in the middle of the night.
Not someone, Tom, the baby daddy.
Yeah, the baby daddy, but it wasn't, again, an unwelcome at 4 a.m. in the morning, came over the irate. The mother felt threatened. The mother told the son to
Call
call the
911.
grandmother, then 911. Police officer shows up.
Show up a couple minutes later.
Jimmy does what you said to do, which is comply with what the officer says. He gets shot.
No, he was fully compliant.
He gets shot after complying with what the police
He
officer
had his hands up. He walks out, and you know what, Tom? This is what I don't get. The officers on paid leave while they're investigating this. I'm thinking something this horrendous that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The first thing you should do is be suspended and investigated, and certainly be charged. But on top of that, you shouldn't be paid to be off. Tom, there's nothing he can say that just this is a little kid. This is what I could see if it was Michael Brown.
You have the video, Jimmy.
Yes, we do. I don't know.
I mean, there's no way.
The 11-year-old boy in Mississippi who was shot in the chest by a police officer after he called 911 for help. Tonight, Aderrien Murry describing the moment police told him to come out with his hands up. His family wanting to know why the officer then opened fire. Here's ABC's DeMarco Morgan.
It's been barely a week since 11-year-old Aderrien Murry was shot in the chest inside his own home by Mississippi police responding to a call for help.
I ran across the corner and then I just got shot.
How did you come out of the room?
I came out doing this.
What did it feel like?
It feel like a taser, like a big punch to the chest.
Aderrien himself calling 911 when he awoke to fighting at 4 in the morning last week. His mother's ex-boyfriend, who she says had been violent previously, showing up at the family's home. The officer who ultimately fired his gun showing up not long after.
Once he was like, come out with your hands up, at that moment is when my son came out.
Why that officer pulled his trigger remains unclear, and city police are not commenting.
He was like, I don't want to die. That's what he was saying. While I was on the ground, I said, you're not gonna die, baby. You're not gonna die, just keep talking.
Aderrien treated in the ICU for collapsed lung and a cut on his liver, lucky to be alive.
Well, tonight, Aderrien is in good spirits, but says he sometimes has trouble breathing. His mother telling me she wants that officer that shot her son charged. He remains on paid leave. Whit?
DeMarco Morgan for us, thank you. And DeMarco will have much more of his interview with
Okay.
And Jimmy, there's no way that you can confuse
nothing, Tommy. There's nothing he can say.
This little boy with someone who's gonna threaten your life.
And in fact, I don't even know why you have a gun out. Okay, you're calling because you heard some noises outside your property. I don't know if the baby daddy was still there when the police got there,
I
but
don't know.
nobody inside the house was a threat. And then this little kid comes out the door. Tom, to hit that little kid in the chest, you have to aim downward. It's not like, this is a tall man where you go chest to chest, where you have the gun out in front of you. You have to actually aim it downward in order to hit him in the chest. And then luckily, he got it in the chest, in the rear bone, Tom. I mean, I know part of the bullet deflected and damaged his liver, but I suffer from, I only have one good lung. I know what it's like to have a collapsed lung and the difficulty in breathing sometimes. But this is going to affect this young man the rest of his lifetime.
Not just physically, but emotionally as well. I was reading an article. God bless him. He said he dreams a lot at night about being in a coffin And this kid is going to be traumatized for the rest of his life. He's going to need therapy for a long time. And of course, it said that he, used to, kind of trust law enforcement and maybe had a little bit more trust.
Yeah, that may be shattered now,
Completely
Tom.
gone. And I mean, this young man said he wants to be a doctor. We definitely, of course, thank God he's still living, and that he will grow up to be a
Hopefully,
doctor.
you use this as a motivation to pursue your dreams and stick to it, because the world could certainly use more doctors.
Exactly. And so we wish the best for this young man. I think that they are filing a $5 million.
Well, $5 million is not enough,
It
Tom.
really isn't.
This is one of those cases where they need to be like the Blanco camp
Yeah,
family, and be suing for $25 million or more.
it's
Um, you could probably eat up $5 million in therapy
yeah,
charges.
and Indianapolis said they don't have that much money in the bank anyway. But either way, they said that.
You know what, Tom? The city owns some property, so just sign the deed of the city over to this family,
Exactly.
to this
But
young
the
man.
reality of it is, and we've talked about this, and sometimes we're on different sides. Behavior needs to change. I mean, behavior's got to change. This little kid did not deserve this.
Well, Tom, I mean, study after study, and this is every year that they compile these numbers. When police officers go to the firing range, not the firing range, the simulation range, where they have to go through this course, and you get like a second to decide if a person's good or bad, if they're friendly or they're criminal, and they measure the reaction, of these officers. And Tom, across the board, doesn't matter if you're white, black, it doesn't matter what the color of the officer is. There's like a half second quickness to fire on a black person than anybody else.
Mm.
They fire on blacks much quicker than they fire on anybody else in those simulations. And then the number of wrongful shots, mistakes on those range is pretty much average across the board. The black average, or the average of mistakes made towards the black people, is always higher than everyone else. So what that lets me know, Tom, is that this is not a white officer thing. This is an officer
Yeah,
thing.
it is.
They just see black people as more of a threat, and they're in fear of their life sometimes. And some of it's not without cause. I mean, the officers are 4 times more likely to be killed by a black person than anyone else. So I understand that. But Tom, a little more care needs to be taken, a little more patience. And I'm of the belief, Tom, that we need to go back to maybe billy clubs, or some kind of hand-to-hand self-defense, as opposed
Are
to
you
pulling out
talking
a
about
weapon.
like the British law enforcement where they got a billy club and a flashlight?
Well, I don't want to go that far. Yes, but yes, start using your billy club in situations first. Hand-to-hand combat. For, like I said, nobody can take an ass whooping anymore. Everything is pull out a gun and shoot, then ask questions later. But once you fire that round off, you can't take it back. There's no recall. It's like, oh well, no, I made a mistake there. I need to take that back. There's no take back,
No,
Tom. And this boy, lucky he didn't die.
very fortunate. Very fortunate, Jimmy. So again, our prayers and our support, for the family of.
If you know this family, tell them that $5 million is not enough. Their lawyer she needs to get a new lawyer if that's what he's recommending.
Gotcha.
And I don't care about the financial situation of the city, Tom. Every city has insurance.
Yeah.
So and whatever the max is on that insurance policy is what they need to be negotiating right now.
Gotcha.
And I know it's more than $5 million.
Right. I mean, ultimately, the mother of this young man, Aderrien Murry, wants the officer to be fired. It's like, look, this.
How about put in jail?
We're calling you for help. You're shooting my child. We're calling you for help.
How about put in jail, Tom?
Well, I think that would be that would probably come
I
after
mean,
if he would have fired. I mean, again, but that would presume that you have criminal charges.
I don't see why he shouldn't have
And
criminal
video
charges filed
footage
against him.
is still under review. They've asked, the attorney, of course, has asked for video footage, which of course they're not releasing. They're saying that it's still under review. It's been, I guess, 10 or so days, pretty much since this happened.
Yeah, it doesn't take that long time to
It
look
does.
at the video and make a determination. So this is an opportunity to try to cover this up. So I wish justice in this case it really is served, because that young boy didn't deserve what he received, Tom.
Again, another young black man. Obviously this one is a lot younger, Jimmy. So let's continue to move forward, Jimmy. We have a a couple of more stories, and we
Okay.
are doing pretty good on time. There is, we were doing some research on this last week, and we talked about some of the great sports wise. So there is a new Negro League baseball exhibit in North Carolina at one of our HBCUs, Johnson C. Smith College, Jimmy, and
J.C. Smith College,
exactly,
yes.
which I thought was pretty interesting for those of you who are sports fans, for those of you who are just a fan of Black history and Black culture in America. Before, some of the all-time greats, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron, they actually started in the Negro Leagues. And we talk about this, Jimmy, every now and again, even though I'm not the biggest baseball fan, is that there are very few African Americans in baseball league today. But this was in the heyday where, this was premier primetime entertainment.
It was.
They didn't allow blacks in Major League Baseball, and so they built their own. So do we have that video, Jimmy?
We do not
Okay.
on that
Okay,
one.
gotcha, no problem. But
There were news stories out there, and it's posted online. But they could not find any
good
video
deal,
on
no
that
problem.
particular story. But yeah, this is a worthwhile endeavor, Tom, and I wish them well. We're raising the money necessary to make this
Good
happen.
deal. And
And I
on the
didn't.
other end, Jimmy, there is a new new facility in campaign for the.
I thought this was an expansion. I don't know if it was.
Now, this is an exhibit at Johnson C. Smith, but we're talking about the national
Right,
Negro League Baseball Museum in Kansas City.
Kansas City, right? They're looking to expand it, right?
Exactly. So they are expanding
Okay.
this, a $25 million campaign to expand this national museum, which, by the way, Jimmy, they had so many people, patrons, who came there this February during Black History Month that there's like we've got to expand. And so they are now raising $25 million in order to get more space, get more people in. And that is great. So for those of you out there who you don't have to be a baseball fan, you don't have to be a sports fan, but when you're talking about the preservation of our history and our culture, this is what we're looking at here.
Well, let me say this, Tom. I'm going to put this challenge out there for all of the large companies, Fortune 500 companies that contributed to Black Lives Matter. Match those donations to this effort, because this is needed much more and be of a greater benefit to society.
Yeah,
So match those contributions for the Bank of Americas and the Nikes and the Coca-Colas of the world.
gotcha. So our next story, Jimmy, is we have about a quarter. This time really flies. The Crown Act was just passed in the Lone Star State of Texas and signed by Governor Greg Abbott here just within the last few days, which basically prohibits discrimination based upon ethnic hairstyles in schools and things of that nature across the state. I believe it joins about
Well,
18,
Tom,
18 or 19 other states in actually
right.
passing the Crown Act, which,
Well, until you told me this, I didn't believe it. Not that I just didn't necessarily believe it, but I didn't think this would be something that Texas would even take up, and this would be an issue here in Texas. We're not really known for our race relations, and I just thought the legislator and the governor would have just ignored this and then moved on. But once again, I think 2 weeks in a row here, I may have been wrong
and
about
Jimmy,
something, which is
this
rare.
got overwhelming support.
It did. It got.
Overwhelming support.
I think there were only 2 votes against it in the Senate, but all of the House
We need
members
to
voted for it.
find out who those people are and get them out of their seat. But there are 18 other states, Jimmy, including Virginia and Tennessee and a few other states. Most of them are in the Northeast or in the West. Louisiana is one of those states, Virginia and Tennessee. And so there are several states, including other southern states.
Well, we have a little video, Tom, so let's play it real quick,
Okay.
just to share this. Then we'll pick it up on the
Sounds
backside.
great.
Schools and workplaces from hair-based discrimination has been signed into law by Governor Abbott. Fox 26's Gabby Hart is live tonight with a breakdown and what the Crown Act means for Houstonians. Gabby.
That's right, Tom. Some of you may remember the story of DeAndre Arnold, a high school senior who was told he couldn't graduate unless he cut his locks. Well, he ended up transferring schools. Now, when the Crown Act goes into effect, that means it will protect natural hairstyles and make policies like the one that DeAndre was confronted with against the law.
On Saturday, Governor Abbott signed House Bill 567, also known as the Texas Crown Act, into law. The Crown Act stands for creating a respectful and open world for natural hair.
This is one of the few pieces of legislation that I'll go home thankful that we passed this 88th legislative session.
State Rep Ron Reynolds helped to author the bill. The Crown Act is already a law in numerous other states, but it didn't become a hot topic in Texas until the story of DeAndre Arnold made headlines back in 2020.
It isn't nice, it isn't clean, it isn't professional.
Arnold was a senior at Barbara Hills High School when he was suspended and told he couldn't graduate unless he cut his locks. It was due to school policy. But once the Crown Act goes into effect, those sorts of policies will be null and void. Natural and cultural hairstyles will be protected.
We deserve to be able to be ourselves in the workplace.
This means that those schools
couldn't graduate, Jimmy, unless he cut his.
No, I heard. Yeah, that's what
I mean,
I heard.
and
That's amazing.
kids, I mean, it didn't matter if he was a 4.0 kid, because we didn't like your locks. You can't graduate. I remember seeing another story, Jimmy, where there was a young man who was a wrestler, and they forced him to cut his locks in order for him to continue wrestling. In a match. It's unconscionable, Jimmy. And
well, it is, Tom, and so the system does work, at times for everyone, even for us. So I'm glad the state of Texas and the other states who have passed these laws have done the right thing to protect people, because certainly you should not be able to discriminate against someone for their hairstyle.
Right, and for young men and for young women as well. I mean, I always advocate for natural hairstyles, and especially for our sisters who, they've made other cultures millionaires and created billion-dollar industries, giving money to folks who don't really invest in them with chemicals and all these other stuff that they put in their hair. Nothing wrong with it in principle, but when you look at the long-term effects of a lot of what's going into your scalp, the chemicals, the brain trauma, and everything else that happens, we need to do what is natural to us for our overall long-term health.
Well, Tom, people don't realize that the skin is an organ. And
the largest organ on the body.
Your body. And what you put on it gets absorbed and get into your bloodstream, into your body. So be very careful, with the chemicals that you expose your skin to. So, hooray for Texas for doing the right thing. So, Tom, I just want to, we have one more video.
Okay.
I was saving the hottest for last, and then we're going to close out.
No, wait a minute. We do have another video after that, but we'll put that.
Yeah, we do, but that's more of a cultural,
right,
feel-good kind of story. This is a kind of a heated topic, but I want to just say this because we've I've some other people watching, and some I thought that I'm the background voice on this video. It's not me. So I may share the views and the values of the person speaking, but trust me, this is not me speaking in the background of this video.
All right.
So let's play it, Tom, and see what you think.
That's good.
This guy's rant about 5 things
exactly.
to fix the black
All right,
community.
let's take it right and see how people respond.
Things that black people can do today to affect change in our community. Number 1, stop supporting rap music. Rap music profits from our destruction. They do nothing but promote negative stereotypes about black people. Number 2, stop voting for Democrats.
My favorite.
Democrats have been using black people for the last 60 years. They do nothing but use us for our votes. Number 3, if you know a man that's not taking care of his children, call him and let him know that he's a disgusting piece of trash.
Preach.
And he's the main reason why the black community is in the situation that it's in right now. Number 4, stop supporting race hustlers like Black Lives Matter. They do nothing but profit from our division. And number 5, my favorite, stop looking at white people to fix our problems. Look at black folks to fix the problem because we're the ones in it.
Listen
5
to this.
things that black people can do today.
All right. Okay. So are they saying that you were the one in the back who is that what they're saying?
Yes, that was not me. Trust me. That was a short video off YouTube, but that already came with the background commentary. So that was not me in the background.
Let's go ahead and kind of get into this because we don't have a lot of time in our show and kind of break these down one by one. First, stop supporting rap music.
I agree. Well, classic rap, old school rap,
And
I
see,
still
but he
like.
just said rap music, period.
I
That's
know
the
the
problem.
the, the more
Because
modern stuff
Jimmy,
is
when we
junk
were
to me.
young, the foundation of rap music, you cannot stop supporting black music carte blanche because there are a lot of, let's have a bigger conversation about this. There's a lot of our artwork out there that is not supported, advocated, and money put into that actually would be very constructive for our community under the genre of rap. But guess what? That isn't what's getting funded, and that's not what getting. That's not.
No, Tom, you can't get a record deal today by the record companies unless it's violent, unless it's degrading to women, unless you're antisocial and a rebel. You'd have to be really some raw, raunchy stuff to get someone's attention. You can't have a positive rap song now and get any airplay
Exactly.
or get in the
Nothing
record store.
positive,
So
nothing constructive.
nothing
It has
positive,
to be
Tom.
something that is, generally speaking, destructive to our community.
So I still listen to Public Enemy. I
Oh
still
yeah,
listen to Sugar Hill Gang. I still listen to the
absolutely.
Furious Five. I listen to the old classics. But none of this modern stuff. To me, a lot of this stuff is just junk. So I don't listen
It,
to it. But
it,
the old stuff I grew up on, I still
it
listen to.
advocates for violence within our community. It advocates for misogyny against our women. That's the trash
Yes.
that's being put out there, and the stuff that is constructed promotes family, that promotes unity, that promotes love. You never hear it.
No, you
Let's
know
go
you
to the
couldn't
next.
get KRS-One or a Boogie Down production. I mean, they just couldn't get published today. It just wouldn't
Let's keep
happen.
moving so we can get our last video in. Do not
Okay.
vote Democrat. I know where you stand on this. I would say,
Oh yeah, they couldn't. Tom, there's no way in hell I would ever vote for a
I understand
Democrat.
this. What
Um,
I say is vote your interest because I don't vote one
it
party.
does,
I don't I don't
and,
I don't
and
I
I
don't I
wish
don't vote any one party. What I do is I vote.
I wish both parties took more of an interest where we could actually compete, where they would compete against our vote. But we have one party ignoring us and the other party taking us for granted. So that's kind of where we
Gotcha.
are.
All right. Not what was the third one? Call any man.
The no good daddies.
That's fine, but okay. What about calling mamas who are not allowing their daddies to be in the lives of their children?
Tom, they're part of the problem
So you
also.
got
I've gone through that myself in my personal life,
you
so I
got
know
to
what
be
that is.
balanced about that as well, because there are a
Yeah.
lot of not just men calling other men. If you have a man who's not taking responsibility, yeah, get him. But also, sisters, if you have a friend or family member who is,
Stop using your children to get against to hurt
I
him.
got a friend who's been in that situation.
Oh, Tom, lots of men are in that
Yeah,
situation. Where the women use the children as weapons against them.
got
So yeah, sisters, stop doing that. First of all, let me just say this: don't if you're not married, don't have a baby, a child. Don't bring a child into this world for any man that you're not married to. That's a starter. So all this baby mama and baby daddy nonsense just needs to stop. But if you do have children and you're not together with the father or the mother, do everything you can for the both of you to work together to be in that child's life.
and it's not the majority because I saw a study, Jimmy, CDC, Center for Disease Control, and they did a family study. Black men, among all ethnic groups, are the most involved in their children.
Tom, they want to be, yes.
Exactly. They are the most involved, statistically speaking. When you look black, white, Asian, Hispanic, black men are not the most married to their babies' mothers, but they are most involved, spend the most time with their children. Black men.
And here's another surprising study, Tom, that children, if you have to choose between the mother and the father, who's the best parent for them to grow up with, it's been shown that children fare better with the father and no mother than with a mother and no father. So, the courts have this ass backwards. If you really, if there's a choice, you have to decide who to put the children with. Children are much better off with their fathers, growing up with their fathers, than they growing up with their mothers.
Gotcha. All right, let's go to the next one.
What was the fourth one?
Support for what they call race hustlers.
Oh yes. Once again, Tom, I would concur on that one. The Al Sharptons, the BLMs, the Antifas of the world would not get my support at all. I just think that whatever effort that they garnish to support whatever they're doing is all aligned in their pockets. Until I see some of that money being invested somewhere in the community to do some good, yeah, they get nothing from me, nothing but scorn, Tom.
It should be about investing in your culture.
It should be.
It should be about investing in your culture. I know that they always, unfortunately, Jimmy, those who are quietly in power, they want to put a certain individual up there who is the face of your community, so they can toy with them and destroy them when they need to, in order to scatter the community. And we cannot have that.
Well, expanding the Negro League Museum, Tom, is a good effort. That's something we should all get behind and help. 25 million should be just a drop in the bucket. We should be trying to raise 100. If Black Lives Matter can raise $90 million, then certainly we can raise 25 million for the museum.
Gotcha. And the very fifth one. Let me see here. What was the last one? I was writing this stuff down so fast. Oh, stop waiting on white people to
solve your problem.
Exactly. Jimmy,
get off your knees, Tom. Stop praying to the white Jesus for salvation and thinking that your salvation is going to come from white people accepting you and deciding that you're their equal. Who are they to determine whether you're equal to them or not? In all reality, and the science can prove this out, so I'm not just making this up off the top of my head, and we can certainly have a show on this, but Black people are the original people. I mean, there have been other species of human beings that have all died out. We conquered all of them. They couldn't take the weather. They couldn't take the disease. But luckily, Black people populated the world, Tom. And what does the Bible say? To honor your mother and your father so your days may be longer. And so, but Black people do not get respected here. Get off of your knees. You are a superior race. You're a closest thing to the original than anybody else in the world. So you can't be inferior to anyone. So nobody can grant you equality. You can't look to someone else who's not Black and say, well, now you're my equal. No, it should be you the one who's granting equality to other people.
And I would say this, Jimmy. You cannot find a group of people dependent on another group of people who control their destiny. That's all I got to say on that one, Jimmy.
Well, Tom, we have about 3 minutes left, and our last video is 2 minutes long, so we are just right
all
on
right,
time.
Jimmy, let's get it rolling. This last video is a fun one.
Yes. Let's see if we make sure I got.
I decided to add the choreography to it. So if the client comes to our premises, we just ask the client, do you want it solemn, or do you want a bit displayed, or maybe you want a small choreography on it. They just ask and then we do it.
Beloved one to the final resting place, they also dance. So I decided to give my mother a dancing trip to her maker.
Tom, I've left instructions for my family to cremate me when I die. But if I wasn't being cremated and it was being buried, I'd want the dancing pallbearers to be at my funeral.
Jimmy, you talking about a homegoing. We went from the old morbid funeral theme to the homegoing now. Jimmy, this takes it up several different levels.
Tom, you know how skillful you have to be to dance with a casket on your shoulder and then on your leg? Not once I ever see them grab the handles of the casket. You know, they just dancing in step. And Tom, all it takes is one person to miss a step, and that thing to come crashing to the ground. And they did it flawlessly.
Jimmy,
That's some skill.
exactly, Jimmy. I mean, this is just taking it to a whole different level, Jimmy. And you talking about if you want to go, you want to go like that.
Yes, if you're gonna if you're gonna have a funeral and go and be buried, yeah, this is how you want to go out. So, but what country in
Ghana.
Africa were there in?
Ghana,
Ghana. Okay.
and this, I mean, and the brilliant thing about it, Jimmy, is not just entertaining, but it's also getting people employed. You know, putting money in their pocket to take care of their family. They're teaching them entrepreneurship. They're teaching them, you know, unity, and it's a part of their social culture because so much of what we do.
Well, Tom, the hint at somebody who's an entrepreneur type who's looking for a business to get into. If you have some friends who can dance and can carry the weight of a casket on their shoulder and still dance, Tom, you know, maybe a business opportunity here.
Hey, Jimmy, I think it's out there. It's just a matter of time.
So yes, it's a good video to share with everyone. Hey, with that being said, guys, we're a little bit over time. We're on, no, it's right at 9
Exactly,
o'clock.
but we definitely hope everybody enjoyed that and took some.
Yes. And don't forget to text us or email us. Send a text message to about, and you'll get our phone number and our email address. You know, hey, if you have things that we need to share, news, local news, family news, anniversaries, graduations, anything good or bad going on, you know, that you think you want to share with everyone else, reach out to us and let us know.
BMS Talk Show at att.net.
At att.net. So, all right, everyone, we'll see y'all next week. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great week.